Well, this is Bishop Edgar Vann, and this is Vantage Point, where we take time to bring to you news, information, and prominent people in the Detroit metropolitan area and beyond who bring significant information to us as a community. I am excited and delighted today because we are very, very close to our annual college weekend here at Second Ebenezer Church. And this is a great, great time of sharing and caring for those who are pursuing educational opportunities, and where we provide as a resource scholarships. We provide, of course, information. We provide the opportunity for access to parents and to students in this particular time of their lives. We're excited to do it again. It's our 26th annual college weekend. And so we're excited about it. And of course, I have a great, great guest with me today so that we can further this conversation, let you know what's going to be available during this time, during this college weekend. And I am just privileged to have with me a good friend and a good friend in this community, Gwen Thomas. Gwen, I'm just so happy to have you and your wonderful organization. I have referred to you in so many circles as the sort of education scholarship guru.
Thank you, Bishop.
Here in Detroit. And so it's wonderful to have you. And we're looking forward to a real good conversation on today. First of all, just tell us something about you, your history in this kind of work. I know you have great testimony about your own son and how you assisted him through the college process. And that just became, a real passion in your heart that you began to use. And this has just become a tremendous opportunity for you to share with thousands and thousands of people here in this area and across the world. So tell us about your organization.
Well, Fresh Perspectives, we're a nonprofit, and we have really just came into this blessing by accident. And really, I have something, you may not remember this, but I had a friend of mine some years ago and said, listen, you have been successful with your son. Would you come and provide some, remarks at a workshop? Will you help us with the workshop that we're going to have? And we had the workshop in downtown Detroit, and you teased me. You said, I heard you on the radio. It is 10 inches of snow, and I can't believe we have 200 people in the room coming to hear you. I've never seen this before. And I laugh every time I think about that because you really inspired me more to continue the word. And so I share with families as a result of my son was able to win $500,000 in scholarships that paid for his education at Morehouse College, his grad degree at Johns Hopkins, and to study abroad to more than 20 countries. So as a result of that, people heard the news and say, oh my God, will you help my son? Will you help my daughter? And I said, yes. And so I started basically, just gathering with some moms over coffee and just sharing what God had put upon me to share everything that I had done right and things that I had done wrong. And before you know it, it has now been more than 15 years of me doing this work. And we created the nonprofit. And then God showed me another thing. He says, I want you to go to Washington, D.C. And so I moved to Washington, D.C., where I stayed for almost 6 years. And I tried to learn everything that I could about the Department of Education and what happened as a result of families that were getting in debt by record numbers. I mean, we have families who are fighting their way out of poverty, trying to send their kids to college. This is, if you go to college, you'll be able to make a decent living and you'll be able to live the American dream and buy a home and that kind of thing. But unfortunately, because of student debt, families were instead, finding themselves back into poverty because of the student debt. It is destroying many families. And, people are 50 and 60 years old still paying for college debt. And so as a result, I created a module, if you will, to educate families on how to get on the trajectory to win scholarships to pay for their college education, as opposed to simply signing their name on a predatory loan, an unsubsidized and a subsidized loan.
Wow, that's exciting. We're going to get into a lot of that. And you have made quite a name for yourself across the country doing these seminars, speaking, providing pathways for people. And this is so needed, especially now, because we are in a different kind of a situation. Just before I get to that, what are the core values of Fresh Perspectives in your seminars?
Well, we want to make sure students are well educated and prepared to go on the journey to pay for college, to go to college and make sure that they're going into fields that are sustainable. We want to make sure students are aligning themselves with 21st century careers. We want to make sure that students understand at the end of the day, you've got to make sure you're going into a field that you'll be able to be employable. And sometimes our students may miss the mark. I mean, I've talked to families all across the world who, in fact, they're happy when their kid gets admitted to college. But I have to share with them, the hype is great, but the real hype is how much money that institution is going to give to your kid. How much money is it going to cost? You've got to do the numbers and you've got to be smart about it. So our core value basically is to make sure that we're educating our community about everything they need to know about pathway opportunities.
Yeah. And, the thing is that every degree is not a real revenue generating degree necessarily.
Correct.
Sometimes people are getting into archaic or overused degrees and professions. I mean, when I hear a person say now, I'm in college and I'm in a marketing program, I'm like, because I know that marketing and is basically being taken over by technology anyway. And we're not going to need the same kind of marketers, nor are we going to need as many marketers, because the machines are going to do that for us. And so keeping people abreast of the latest information and the most likely careers, fitting them for the future.
Right. I mean, we hear about it all the time, that the careers are in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And we've got to make sure our students, whether you're going into skilled trades, again, that's, a STEM field, or whether you're going to anything related to STEM, those are where the jobs are. I mean, we got caught up a few years back with microchips during the COVID period, where we ran out of microchips for technology. And look how that paralyzed the United States. And so now there are companies that are, hoping to develop that work here in the U.S. so we won't have to depend on foreign countries.
Yeah, I think it's very, very important. Again, fitting people for the future is important. A lot of times standing before them are people who have been successful in their generation, doing what they did and studying what they studied, and almost saying to the student, look at me.
Right.
Well, looking at me is not going to get them a sustainable career necessarily, unless that teacher or that counselor or that professional says, no, let's all take a look at what the future is going to look like. And that's where you need to be.
Right. I tell my students, I don't care what you're talking about going into, look at the new aspects, the 21st century aspects. That is, how does it touch the digital world? How does it touch internet? How do you make it to a 21st century career? I don't care if you're talking about being an artist. Well, now you've got to be a digital artist. That you got to make sure that you're able to use technology that takes it digitally, as opposed to just, freelance fine art.
Absolutely. Now, what differentiates Gwen Thomas from other college readiness type forums? There are others. There are not nearly as many as there used to be, I will say. But what differentiates your approach to this than you would say other kinds of college readiness programs?
Well, one thing that we do that a lot of organizations don't do is we work with students on writing those scholarships that win. That's the element. There's all kinds of discussions people can have surrounding, understanding, SAT prep and FAFSA. But when it's all said and done, we buckle down to make sure students know how to write. And that's a problem in many, many school districts, that students are not as strong in their writing skills as they could be. And so when it's time to write those scholarships, people are hung up with the list of scholarships. I have a book I wrote, The Parent Smart Guide to Sending Your Kids to College Without Going Broke. And it lists 1,000 scholarships that I vetted from undergrad all the way to PhD. And that's well and done. But the book comes alive when I do my seminars, but we teach students how to write an essay that resonates with the reader. And so that means telling their story. And their students are intimidated by the scholarship writing process. And so that's what we do well. We teach students how, whether you've got humble beginnings or whatever the case may be, tell your story. And we teach them how to do that. And so that is what we've done well. We do one-on-one personal coaching with our students. And so that makes the difference compared to some of my counterparts. I mean, we really are invested with our students.
That sounds great. Now let's talk about our students for a moment, especially here in the state of Michigan, in this Southeast Michigan area, for example. There's been a lot of studies that have shown that people in Michigan and the educational standards in Michigan should probably be a lot higher.
A lot higher.
Our expectation of people educationally is not high enough. The appreciation that people have or don't have for education in Michigan is not where it should be. Some of this is historical, based on, great jobs in manufacturing, and other kinds of activities, which have caused people to believe that, they could make a lot more money doing without necessarily
going to college.
A post-secondary college education, and that has literally been true. It's not that true anymore, but it has literally been true. Although there are other avenues that people are using these days in order to finance themselves. But let's speak a little bit about the value proposition. Let's speak a little bit about what people think and our attitudes as Michiganders and Southeast Michigan people in particular, in terms of sending our kids and making you and I know our history as a people was, hey, mama worked, in somebody's kitchen and she made enough money to send me to school and that kind of thing. Well, nobody's doing that anymore.
No.
Do you think that we need to lift our appreciation and standard for education, period?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't agree with a lot of things that are happening in our community, paying kids to go to high school.
Oh, that's about the worst thing I've ever heard.
And, we have to put greater value on education. Our people as a whole are very intelligent, but we're not pushing Black excellence. And I want to see us push Black excellence. The numbers regarding graduation rates and the numbers regarding literacy is abysmal. It is awful in this area. And people are not bold enough to have a conversation about this issue. And so, I love when my students, want to prepare, and a lot of times, when I'm working with them, it's hard work. They have to write those essays over and over again. But there's no one taking the time to really teach them the basics like they should. And so our community needs a greater emphasis on education.
You mentioned paying kids. I've never heard of anything so ludicrous for us to pay kids to attend school.
Right.
I've never heard of anything.
Right.
And, we're afraid now to stand up against stuff like that and say anything about it. Because, sometimes our friends are involved at certain levels.
Exactly.
And we're afraid to have the discussions. We ought to be having these discussions. You're setting forth an artificial standard here that is not sustainable through life.
Correct.
So it's excellence that we ought to be. And I love the fact that you keep using the word excellence, because it's excellence that we ought to be promoting and not paying people to just show up.
Right, because that's no guarantee.
That's no guarantee that they're ever going to be excellent or ever going to do their work or ever going to do anything.
Right.
So, I think that the raising the standard and the value and sort of the ethos of education itself here in Michigan and among our kids is going to be very, very important. But now, what do you say to people who say, well, there are all kinds of ways to make money these days?
It is true.
I can get off into cryptocurrency. I can do DoorDash and Uber and Lyft and make me hustle and make me some money. Or, I can be a social media influencer and on TikTok and make me a bunch of money. What do we say with all of these other alternative revenue streams that are out there?
Well, young people are making money the best way they can. It has to be sustainable, and you got to learn how to count your money. If you're going to be a TikTok influencer, then you need to incorporate, and you need to know, how do I, build myself as a business person, a well-respected business person? Am I going to hire staff? If you're going to hire staff, you need to know, all the things relative to running a business. Can you read your, financial statements? Do you need to go to the bank? Do you need to buy a new building for this facility that you're now going to be a social media influencer? You still have to have some level of education, whether it's associate's degree, whether it's a 4-year degree, to really maintain that business and level of business etiquette. So I tell students all the time, if that's what you want to do, then fine. But still, just know when you get to a certain level, you have to be educated. We hear about athletes all the time, for example. They make millions of dollars and they, unfortunately have somebody else that's managing their money. And, unfortunately, they don't know and their money goes away. As simple as that. They have no accountability to, how they're paying for anything or how they're managing their, personal income.
I'm talking with Gwen Thomas, who is the CEO of Fresh Perspective Seminars, and we're getting ready for our college weekend, February the 22nd. And this is a productive conversation. Hey, get somebody to join into this conversation, to like it and to share it. And of course, leave your comments there as well, and prepare yourselves and prepare your young people for a greater life ahead of them. Because listen, this doesn't start, if you're a senior in high school and you all are just getting a fresh blush of what we're talking about here tonight, hey, I hope it's not too late for you. We really want to catch people much younger, 8th grade, 9th grade, who are coming into high school so that you can begin to construct that pathway. Gwen, tell us a little bit, though, about something that's really being pushed, another alternative in our community, and that's entrepreneurship. Everybody's being told, start your own business, don't work for nobody, set your own hours, all of that kind of stuff, without telling them on the back end that if you have your own business, you got to work twice as hard as a person that works for someone else. But we don't want to downplay, of course. We want to lift entrepreneurship, but it still requires skill-based learning.
It does. I don't care how long you've been in entrepreneurship. Even the entrepreneurs who've been around for many, many years, things change all the time. But the major issue that we have is how to grow a business. And you have businesses who open up all the time. Can they last 7 years? Sometimes businesses don't last but 7 years. Or they go out of business. But the challenge is, how do you sustain that business? You need to go, whether, like I said, it's a 2-year, 4-year institution. They have MBAs for a reason, Masters of Business Administration. So you'll know how everything it is to run that business to a level that you can maybe one day sell that business, grow that business, franchise that business, take that business to the stock exchange. I remember when I was a young person working at Merrill Lynch, Johnson Products had been my it ended up being my employer later on, but they were the first African-American business to go to the New York Stock Exchange. And later I ended up working for Mr. Johnson, and he is now, George Johnson, I'm sorry, and he is now 97 years old.
He's still living.
He released his memoir just the other day.
Oh, my goodness.
That's Afro Sheen, Johnson Products.
Remember.
Yeah. And so when we went to work for Mr. Johnson some years ago, one of the things he always pushed is stay educated. And I don't care. He was very successful. It was somebody we looked up to. Later on, I went to work for John Johnson, Ebony and Jet magazine. Again, It was making sure that you knew everything you knew, not just about your business, but about your competition. So these are things, as a young business person, we tell young people, you need to go to work for another company so you'll know how it works. Don't just assume, you know how to run a business. You may know how to make the money aspect, but still there are other things besides your product or your service that makes you a well-rounded business person.
What America really is all about, though, is growing a business into a corporate entity.
Exactly.
I mean, this is what capitalism is all about. So if we're really honest about this, it's about scale.
Correct.
It's not just about being able to make a living,
right,
and buy a boat and a house and a nice car.
Right.
It's about being able to give scale. When people look at these multi-billionaires of the world, I won't call their names, but the multi-billionaires of the world, we tend sometimes to have some disgust for them, wondering how did they get. Well, they understood the multiplicity of scale and how you begin to scale a business so that it becomes even more profitable. So it's not just something that takes care of me and my family and my cousins. It's something that changes the world, has the ability to change just the iPhone. Let's look at how that has changed life itself all across the world. But it began to scale. So then there was an iPod and an iPad and it's the scale.
Integrated. Yes. Yeah. Vertically integrated the business. Yeah.
Right. So learning that requires a certain amount of skill and expertise that we're talking about.
And they learn that from going to college. So they're not going to know that just on the street and opening up a business just like that. They have to know the history of business development.
So let's talk about specifically about scholarships. This is something that I know you're an expert in. Scholarships. What would you say to parents who are out there, adults who are out there who, unfortunately, sometimes in our community, we hear this refrain. Oh, you graduating from high school? Well, I'm going to help you do all that and get your little prom together and all that kind of stuff. Now, when you through with that, I'm through, right? You better figure it out. What, it's up to you now, what do we, when we say scholarships, you're now talking about financial resources that are available out there for people to excel in their educational pursuits. Tell us about those kinds of opportunities. Let's speak to a parent who is saying, I don't know about college for my kids. I want them to go start a business or get a job or do this, that, and the other. I don't know if college is preferable because we don't have the money and we don't want to go into a lot of debt. What do you have to say?
Well, first of all, I tell families to give students an orientation to college and to careers as early as possible. So if you have a student, for instance, who, let's say at 7 or 8 years old, they say, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a nurse. Give them an orientation. I don't care if you just go to the library and buy a few books, or let them look at a few books, or let them ask as many questions when they go for their annual checkup, to learn from that doctor, to learn from that nurse. That's first and foremost. And we sometimes fail to do that. We sometimes fail to give students an orientation so they understand what that career looks like, what that journey to college is going to look like. And so sometimes when we talk about scholarships, students have to have a story to tell. They've got to be passionate about what their journey is. So if they've been talking about being a nurse or a doctor since they were 7 years old and they're now 17, they've got a passion for that. It's in their heart. It's in their mind. So they have a story, and we have to teach them how to tell a story. There are so many different types of scholarships. There are scholarships for people who serve in the community, young people. We want to teach students as early as possible about the value of service. You've got young people right here in the church who serve. They may, when it's time to Thanksgiving, and you give out a lot during Thanksgiving, they're there by your side packing boxes. That's a story for them to talk about in their community, what they're doing in their community. And so we teach students there's church scholarships, there's civic, there's community scholarships. There are scholarships aimed at your future career. So they're looking for STEM students. And then there are all kinds of scholarships related to military, Coast Guards. And I tell families all the time, just take an inventory from head to toe. Who you support in your community. Is there a hair product? Yeah, there could be a scholarship for a hair product. Is there a skin cream? Yes, there could be a scholarship for a skin cream. Is there a wearable? Is there a shoe company? Is there a food item? Is there Coca-Cola, the Kentucky Fried Chicken? Just take an inventory of everywhere you spend your money. There are scholarships. Now, we don't know if some of those things are going to be reared back as a result of the politics that we're dealing with right now, but there are tons of scholarships. And so students, we teach them how to plan. Scholarships a lot of times start as early as 11th grade. So that's why it's so important for students to be focused on their career, not waiting to the last minute, but there are scholarships as early as the 11th grade. I have students who, or parents, I should say, who sometimes, are caught between a situation that they're not in the best school district and they want to pull their kid out of the school district. Well, first, before you do that, find out if they, attend this particular school district for, 4 years. Is there a scholarship waiting at the end of that term? And make sure you know what the grade point average. In Detroit is the Promise Scholarship, but you've got have to have a 3.0 grade point average. 2.9 or 2.8 won't cut it. And so it's incumbent upon parents to know these things. I didn't know that you had to have a 3.0. You should be asking those questions as early as possible.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Right here in the Detroit area, there are programs out there that are widely known, maybe not so widely publicized, but widely known, which are dual enrollment programs, for example. They are also, if I've already got a high school diploma and an associate degree when I come out of high school, then I've only got 2 more years to try to finance. And there's some ways in which that would already be financed. Yes,
you've saved a whole lot of money being smart about it. But, community colleges got a bad rep for a number of years. And a lot of times students don't understand the great value in getting a 2-year degree, and you're able to automatically transfer many of those credits to a 4-year institution, and they'll give you a transfer scholarship for $5,000, depending on what school, but you got to ask for it. They're not just going to automatically give it to you. So there are schools that are partnering With HBCUs, there are major four-year institutions that recognize that, hey, we've got some students at Morehouse College, so we could have a dual enrollment program at the University of Michigan if they're looking at, going into engineering or medicine. So there are opportunities. Students and parents just have to do the homework.
Yeah. Is this not a little overwhelming for a number of parents who are sometimes just working hard to survive, their families to survive, and may not be as educationally astute as they might need to be in order to properly guide their kids into this direction? Is that something that you offer with your organization?
Yeah, that's part of the reason that we started the organization, because we knew that families were overwhelmed. And I started doing this work all day, every day, 365. So families were able to contact me and ask questions. I get calls all the time. And we hold a number of programs in the community. We're known for one of our signature programs, our Black Friday Scholarship Boot Camp. And that's always held in November. It's always November Scholarship Month. And sometimes families like, why do you have it? That's the holiday weekend. Well, it is a time where families are at home. Students are at home. And so we are trying to make sure while America's out shopping for Christmas gifts, we want our students to be focused on shopping for scholarships and building wealth and not creating debt. And so that is a community program. We work very hard all year long to offer that program in the community. And during the summer months, we often have other workshops, and we partner with organizations like yourself to go out and share, at least giving them some insight on what the pathway looks like and what they should be doing. But yeah, we do have families who contact us and hire us to work with their student one-on-one.
Well, you mentioned something there that really kind of pricks something in me, because for some reason or another, still a great number of our people feel that they get something for nothing, that there's no sacrifice involved. It's a holiday weekend. What is a holiday when you're really, really trying to provide a future for not only for your child and their lives, but for your family? So what could be more appropriate? What's a holiday? I mean, and again, I think we have to take a different look at some of the things that we just seem to hold so dear while forgetting other things that are so essential. And I think that's very, very important. It speaks, though, to this whole idea of financial literacy in our community, which we know is a very, very sore spot in our community. Some of it, I'm sorry, I have to look at our regular educational system, our public school educational system sometimes, and say, instead of having a trigonometry class or algebra 5 or whatever, when I'm not a math major, maybe a financial literacy where we're talking about investments and taxes and real estate and how to save and how to run a household. And I mean, those kinds of practical things need to be discussed. Financial literacy in our community is a great need. And so without it, we don't have the tools that we really need to actually push our kids into the right direction too sometimes. And that's the gap you fill.
Yeah, we have been working very hard to partner with some of the school districts and some of the charter schools to come in. We've had some success this year with a few of the charter schools who recognize the value that we provide. And we spend a lot of time with our young people to make them understand, because oftentimes there may not be someone at home who will give them everything that they need. We have the major challenges, FAFSA. We have a lot of families who, will not complete the information because they're afraid of, sharing that kind of information, which the government already knows how much money they have. So they already know. But sometimes it's a challenge.
Sign nothing. I don't how we go thinking that nobody knows.
They already know.
I mean, you can just about Google up anything you want to know anywhere about anybody.
Right. So we work with students on everything there is regarding financial literacy. What's unique about our program is we work with the students and the parents. And so we want to make sure that the parents know everything that we're teaching the students. And so they're in on it as well, every step of the way. So the whole family is informed. Our goal is to make sure we have families who are not in debt. And we have students who are going to college and they are running out of money. And no one is telling them that they can tap out, meaning there's only a certain amount of money that you can borrow as an undergraduate student. And you need to know way ahead of time how much money your parent has or if they're going to contribute. And so if you can, rely on your parent for some of it, that's fine. But every parent doesn't have it. And how, what do the parents do when they have 2 or 3 kids that are going to be in college at the same time?
Right.
And so that means that family has to sit down and have a bold conversation. This is how much we have, or we do not have any money. And let's think of an alternative plan. And that's where scholarships are going to come in, because if you don't have a plan to include scholarships and you don't have any money, you're going to tap out of money because you can't make it through undergrad without any money from your parent or scholarships. You're just not going to do it. I've seen it over and over again. Mm-hmm. And, here's a student, they get to their junior or senior year and they've got to drop out because of money.
Well, that does happen. And the key word that you just said is plan.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody plans to fail, but so many fail to plan, right?
Correct.
Families have to sit down, as you say, and have these bold conversations because planning is a part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a part of, we don't just take life haphazardly and go from day to day. No, there's planning involved. Whenever you have kids, you ought to have a plan. You ought to think down the road.
Mm-hmm.
We ought to be in a position to do so. It's so important for us. Give us, if you don't mind, what some of these systemic barriers may be toward education or toward scholarships we have identified some of them, of course, but are there any other barriers that you see that are naturally out there?
Families really just don't know what's available. When I sit down and, I talk to families all the time and I'll say, there's tons of scholarships available. First of all, they don't want to do the work. They don't want to do the research. They will go online and think everything is available online. And that's the reason why I wrote the book, because I vetted 1,000 scholarships. But if you go online and you push this button, it's going to lead to this button, it's going to lead to that button. And guess what? They now have all your information, all these predatory lenders, and they're going to start sending you all kinds of literature.
And you think you hit the jackpot.
You think this is a valuable website. So that's one thing, because they're not educated on where those scholarships are. The other challenge with many families is that, they have to understand, go to a college that has value. I always tell families all the time, ask this bold question. Tell me who graduated from this college with this degree who looks like me.
Ah, wow.
And where are they? Because the value of an institution is the value of the alumni. So you have colleges like, FAMU can brag about the graduates. They can brag about the millionaires who graduated from their MBA programs and where they are now. University of Michigan can brag about the graduates of University of Michigan, the athletes from University of Michigan, where they are. Law school, the medical school. They can brag about being a research institution. And so families oftentimes don't know the right questions to ask. And that's what we're there for.
That's great. Speaking of FAMU, I just happen to know because my daughter's a graduate of FAMU, but there are colleges and universities that have special programs that are designed to get people in and out.
Mm-hmm.
That 5-year business program at FAMU is the best in the country.
Yes, it is.
Black or white school.
Yes, it is.
And so many people have come out of there in 5 years.
Yes.
With a master's degree.
Correct.
And been able to move on. And they've become the envy of every corporation.
Mm-hmm.
So the corporations are down there actively recruiting people out of that sort of 5-year, specialized concierge level program.
It's impressive.
Very
impressive.
Much so. Very much so. And so there are colleges and universities, as you say, that we've got to take a look at and stop looking at the football teams and stop looking at the band,
Right.
Start looking at the academic curriculums and the reputation of that, as you say, the alumni and other people who have come from it and how successful they are in terms of putting your child into academic institution. I think that's very, very important. And what you'll find out is that there are some very, very prominent people who didn't go to the Ivy League schools or didn't go to the, cream of the crop, creme de la creme type of a school, but they've come from other schools that were more affordable at that time for them and have still gone to the top. These are great schools.
Well, I have to mention, the HBCUs, a lot of times, let me just say, years ago, they may not have gotten the proper due. And many of them now are doing fantastic. I look at the work that Morgan State, for example, is doing. I'm so impressed with Professor Wilson over there and the work he's doing. And they are becoming a great institution. When you look at Prairie View, when you look at some of these HBCUs, they've aligned themselves with government contracts. And a lot of them, a lot of the government agencies rely on the research that the students are doing there. From anything from, the defense departments to NASA. And so there are so many great institutions, but we've got to make sure our students are well aware before they, make that final decision. We want to make sure it's a good fit. We want to make sure that they're giving them some money to go there. And so it's incumbent upon our students to work very hard. Oftentimes they don't understand how important for them to do well in high school and even to get an understanding. And, I hear from so many students that say, Ms. Thomas, I just didn't know what was ahead. I didn't know, and they fall a little short, but we try to get to our families as early as, ninth grade. So they have an understanding of, what the rigor should be, what their journey should look like.
Well, that's great. That's great. I have had this wonderful opportunity to share with Gwen Thomas, a good friend, and of course, a great, great pillar in this community here in Detroit and throughout the world about her Fresh Perspective seminars, her passion for education, how she guides in her organization people directly to scholarships and opportunities for kids to go to college. We're coming up on our college weekend, February the 22nd, right here at Second Ebenezer Church, Detroit, and we are looking for you. We want not only students, but we want parents as well to come and to be a part of this. As you can see, it can't be done unless there's a partnership here. Whatever that parent or significant adult in the life of that particular child is, you need to be here and help lead and guide your child toward success. It is a process. It's a process. It doesn't happen automatically because a kid graduates from high school. It's going to need you to be involved. And students, listen, don't sit back and act as if somebody else is supposed to be more interested in your future than you. So it's a partnership. It's a collaboration. And Gwen Thomas has given to us some tremendous information and inspiration toward what this should be. She's going to be a presenter. She's going to be a presenter at the college weekend, 10 o'clock a.m., February the 22nd, right here at Second Ebenezer Church. You don't want to miss this. She's got the book, The Parent's Guide to Scholarships. It's got 1,000 different leads in there for you. It's going to be a tremendous, tremendous event. Tell somebody now, this is where you need to be on February the 22nd. Just a couple last little things we want to try to see. What would you say to the students? We've talked a lot about parents and educators and systems and colleges and universities. But what do we want to say to the students? What's your final word to them?
Well, we've helped students win about $30 million in scholarships. And for our students who listen, these have been the winners. And so I think our record shows for itself. And so if you listen and if you lean in, you can win. And so we want to help as many students as we can.
And what would you say to this community? If you had the opportunity to give the commercial that I just gave, if you were really, really wanting to, if you had a commercial that ran as a PSA on television, what would you say to this community with regard to the work that you do?
Got to be in it to win it. So we want to make sure students understand this is serious. This is your pathway to the future. And we've got a lot of bright young people in this community, and they just need a hand up. They just need someone to guide them, and they can be our next leaders in these major corporations. And so I'm here to help. Sounds great.
Well, here it is. You'll see it on the screen. College Weekend, Second Ebenezer Church. It's coming up on February the 22nd. It'll start at 10 a.m. with Gwen Thomas, and then 11 o'clock will be, of course, your opportunity to meet the colleges and universities firsthand. They'll be here, represented, scholarships and admissions taking place on site here. Scholarship and gift card drawings and those kinds of things will be taking place as well. And we invite you to be here, to be a part of this great event. It's our 26th annual College Weekend. We're looking forward to you. Thank you, Gwen, for being with me.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. You always. Thank you so very much. And we're also grateful to Comerica Bank for helping to be a sponsor not only of this particular forum, but of course, the college fair itself. God bless you and God keep you. We'll see you on February the 22nd.